In a previous presentation, we discussed the causes of lack of reading habits among school students. The current presentation is aimed at identifying some of the consequences or results of lack of reading habits among students. So, first, the lack of reading habits among school students results in limited language skills. So as we know that generally reading helps us in developing our vocabulary, it helps us in learning grammar indirectly, and it helps us in understanding the structure of language used in multiple, in different types of writing, in different types of books. And so when students do not read adequately, what happens is that they have limited vocabulary, they have limited understanding of the practical use of grammar, and generally they do not develop the kind of or understand the kind of language structure that is used in practical sense. The next important result of limited or non-reading habits among students, school students, is that they have limited knowledge, limited understanding, limited comprehension, and generally they lack analysis skills as a result of lack of reading habits. The next thing that happens is that generally students who read less or who do not have adequate reading habits have limited critical thinking skills. So that actually means that readers have the opportunity to develop as critical thinkers because they study, because they read different types of life situations in the books that they read or the reading material. But in the case where they do not read, there are less chances of them becoming critical thinkers. Then the other important thing is that book reading, limited book reading or non-book reading habits lead to restricted worldview or limited worldview or one-dimensional worldview among students. The other thing that lack of reading habits can result in is the limited cultural awareness. So especially students who read novels, who read stories of different cultures, they can have the opportunities to have an understanding of the cultural nuances, cultural practices. But this does not happen when students do not have adequate reading habits. The next important thing is this ultimately leads to a unidimensional understanding on the part of the students when they have limited or no reading habits. Further, when students do not read, they do not develop deeper understanding of the academic concepts or subjects that they study. As a result, in many cases, they resort to rote learning or memorization, which leads to artificial understanding of things. And so they can get good grades and marks in some cases, but their real comprehension, real understanding is not developed. This, in many cases, also leads to poor academic performance, especially when there is authentic assessment that actually is focused on measuring the real understanding, the critical thinking abilities of the students rather than their memorization or rote learning. In that case, this can lead to poor performance, poor academic performance. Lack of concentration. Generally, readers develop their concentration span, especially readers who read longer texts. In the case of students who do not have the habits of reading longer texts, they generally lack concentration. Limited emotional development. Again, readers, especially readers who read non-academic stuff, who read, for example, novels and stories of great writers, who read psychological situations, social situations in texts such as novels or in poetry. They can develop their emotional health, and so they are more emotionally developed in comparison to generally non-readers. Limited chances of lifelong learning. Again, reading makes people in general, but especially students, lifelong learners, because readers make them independent learners. So when they develop vocabulary, when they develop understanding, they can keep on reading and learning on their own, whether they are in school, whether in the class, or whether they are outside, wherever they are. So reading helps in the process of lifelong learning. And lastly, when students read, and so when students do not read, what happens is that they have limited chances of lifelong learning. Lastly, non-readers generally have restricted personality development, because reading exposes them to various situations, and so they have better understanding of life, better understanding of the emotions of the characters in, for example, in the plots in novels or in poetry. And so they have generally a bigger and a larger understanding of various situations, and so that actually helps in the process of personality development. So in the absence of reading habits, there is a danger of restricted personality development among the school students.